The shocking truth about the three most brutal biblical nations ever judged by God's fury at midnight. In the deep silence of midnight, a darkness surged over the ancient lands, cloaking them in an eerie veil that whispered of doom. The air crackled with unspeakable dread, where shadows danced like phantoms and the weight of judgment loomed heavy. Three nations, marked by brutality and bloodshed, trembled under the shattering thunder of divine wrath set to descend upon them. Was it mere coincidence, or was there something otherworldly at play? As a blood-red moon rose, casting sinister reflections, the tales of their horrors became impossible to ignore. Down in the valley of Moab, tales of child sacrifices echoed, a chilling reminder of the people's desperation to appease dark gods. The very earth seemed to shiver in horror, a land cursed with ash and sorrow. Fateful rituals called for the youngest, the innocent a mother's wails chilling the marrow of anyone who dared hear. Freshly turned soil held secrets, unmarked graves scattered like confessions across the battlefield of lost innocence. Figurines with twisted features were unearthed. Were they messengers of doom? Or guardians of their ill-gotten gains? Then, in the heart of Canaan, warriors cloaked in rage sharpened their blades. Warriors renowned for slaughter, their only religion was terror, carving their names into the annals of shame. They reveled in the chaos of destruction, always hungry, always itching for the next conquest. But as night fell, they would join the others in trembling fear, much like their prey. They too could feel the earth tremor beneath their feet as if warning them. All their glory would turn to ash as the skies darkened, swirling with discontent. Were they too far gone to seek repentance? As the clock ticked unyieldingly towards judgment hour, the third nation, Assyria, stood cloaked in its own arrogance. Fierce and relentless, the Assyrian forces laid waste to any civilization that dared oppose them. Tension hung in the air thick enough to slice through. Their masterful siege tactics were a marvel to some, but behind those walls stood haunted figures captured in an eternal echo of despair. The dark prophet's words flowed in the air, haunting. You'll see your fate revealed at midnight. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. A hushed whisper slithered through the towns like smoke, entangling desperate hearts in fear. What would happen when the clock struck its fateful hour? With every breath, the tension thickened, souls longing for salvation but spiraling deeper into darkness. The time had come, the signs had appeared, but what awaited these brutal nations was more terrifying than any could imagine. As shadows elongated, a spark ignited deep within, screaming, "Judgment is upon you." What could possibly follow? Would they rise or fall beneath the weight of their dread? The ground rumbled ominously, sending chills through the spines of men and women alike. It was as if the very earth was alive, breathing, and ready to unleash its fury. In the valley of Moab, the sky hung low, dark clouds swirling like a tempest about to erupt. Villagers huddled by flickering fires, eyes darting nervously as they leaned in to hear whispered stories of the ancient echoes that had awakened. The tales grew more vivid, their horrific details contorting the faces of those gathered, each person becoming a vessel for the collective fear gnawing at their souls. Do you hear that? A voice pierced the stifling air, cutting through the whispers. It sounds like wails, like mothers calling for their lost children. The crowd nodded in quiet horror, memories of rituals gone wrong twisting like the smoke that curled above their heads. Children played in a distant field, unaware of the dread invading their parents' hearts, barely vibrating beyond the surface of their innocent smiles. Meanwhile, in Canaan, warriors stood with their weapons drawn, the tips glistening like fangs waiting to strike. Cold sweat dripped from their brows as the night deepened, an unsettling silence enveloping them. The proud warriors often found glory in destruction, but now they clutched their swords with trembling hands, confusion flashing in their eyes. A chill crept down their spines as they shared nervous glances. One warrior shouted, "Fear. We do not know fear." But his voice trembled, betraying his bravado. As they rallied around their fires, fierce laughter transformed into uncertain murmurs. The outlines of their once great empire flickered in the light as they debated whether their violent past could ever lead to forgiveness. The very walls they had broken down now stood shadowed by their memories, calling back the whispers of the fallen. Above them, the blood-red moon loomed larger, an ominous herald of what awaited. Farther north, within the fortified walls of Assyria, the air crackled with frenzied energy. Shadows darted past the towering structures, and the chilling realization of vulnerability gripped the heart of the fiercest of leaders. "We are strong," one leader bellowed, raising a fist. But even among his troops, doubt hung like a thick mist. As the hour approached, the bloodied history of their conquests weighed heavier than any armor they wore. The cries of the defeated haunted them, a reminder of the cycle of destruction they had set in motion. As the old sun dipped below the horizon, a single figure emerged, a dark prophet draped in tattered robes, his voice a gravelly rasp that shattered the silence. "You've all sealed your fates." The words echoed ominously, slithering into the hearts of every soldier, every villager, igniting a wildfire of panic. All eyes turned skyward as darkness enveloped the land, eclipsing the moon. What was about to unfold felt like a nightmare manifesting into reality. Was judgment a mere myth? Or had the time truly come to account for the blood that soaked the earth? Sudden flashes of blinding light broke through the blackened sky, illuminating everything with a wrathful glow. Shock rippled through the masses, and a collective intake of breath echoed as fear transformed into an electric pulse of dread. They could sense it, something was coming, and it was unstoppable. But what? As the clock ticked agonizingly toward midnight, one desperate question loomed: would anyone have the courage to face the reckoning ahead? The silence shattered with the first toll of midnight, but what came next was a thunderous revelation that would reshape their shattered worlds. And in the heart of the darkness awaiting them, a terrifying truth about their fate began to unfold. What revelation awaited them as the judgment unfolded? The air thickened with anticipation as beams of light slashed through the shroud of darkness. The villagers in Moab could hardly breathe, their hearts racing, matching the frantic rhythm of the thunder in the distance. Each flash illuminated terrified faces, revealing a wild mixture of hope and despair. They turned to one another as if searching for a reason to hold on, but every expression reflected the same dread. What horror awaited them? In Canaan, the warriors felt the ground shake beneath them, a reminder that their time of reckoning had arrived. The bravado that once fueled their battles began to dissipate like the waning flames of their campfires. "What if this is it?" a young soldier whispered, the tremor in his voice a stark contrast to the hard armor he wore. The truth sank in that each life they took, every village they razed, had pulled them deeper into a dark fate from which they could not escape. The night felt alive, creeping closer, not with the promise of glory but with the certainty of judgment. As the ominous echoes rolled through the valley, the prophet continued his harrowing chant. "Fates entwined, and sins laid bare. Look to the skies, for your truth lies there." His raspy voice sent shivers down spines, the words wrapping around each heart like a vice. To the warriors of Canaan, it felt as though he was piercing through their very souls, revealing the bloodied history they thought was buried. A blade of panic gripped them tight. Could they fight what was coming? Or had they fought enough? Meanwhile, in Assyria, the leaders gathered in a frantic huddle, eyes scanning the darkened horizon. The leader rose to confront the growing unease. "We will not cower before a legend." He roared, but his voice cracked, fissures of fear betraying him. The pressure mounted, each heavy breath pulling them further from the illusion of invincibility they wielded so carelessly. But the cries of the fallen grew louder, transcending space and time. It was as though the earth itself mourned, lamenting every tear shed, every cry unanswered. Walls that once bore the weight of conquests now seemed to tremble, a chorus of voices rising, begging for acknowledgement. Suddenly, the ground split open with a deafening roar, reminiscent of an ancient beast awakening from a long slumber. The earth groaned, and fissures expanded, swallowing everything in their path: trees, homes, things once deemed sacred. Each crack felt like God's finger pointing, calling each nation to account. Panic spread, a wave of cries surged, echoing the fears that had echoed through the crowded nights. That I and the flickering light, a figure emerged from the chaos cloaked and menacing. The villagers gasped, recognizing the dark prophet now standing at the center of the madness, arms raised high as lightning danced around him. "You cannot run from what you've become," he shrieked, his eyes glowing with an unearthly fire. Huddled together in their camps, everyone understood, in that instant, that judgment was not just near, it was upon them. Broken truths, painful truths, snaked through their minds, blurring the lines between victim and villain. As the blood-red moon finally burst through the clouded sky, illuminating the chaos, one thought resonated louder than all the others: was this the beginning of the end, or could something remarkable emerge from the ashes of their choices? The ground trembled with one final shudder as shadows twisted and danced across the landscape, hinting at the truths yet to be unveiled. In that moment, the air vibrated with a chilling whisper: the reckoning has only just begun. What horrors lie in the unveiling of their past? What truths tend to get lost when Judgment Day arrives? The ground stilled, pregnant with the weight of the moment. Rain began to pour, thick droplets smacking against the earth, mingling with the dust that the winds had stirred. It felt as though the heavens themselves bore witness to the unfolding chaos, crafting a mournful symphony, each note a reminder of sin, loss, and inevitable judgment. Villagers in Moab huddled close, eyes wide, breaths shallow, as the sky split open with brilliant flashes, illuminating the prophet's ghastly silhouette. "Listen! Listen!" he bellowed, and the thunder seemed to resonate with him. The crowd shimmied closer, the sheer power of his voice cutting through the rain-soaked air. For every action, there is a consequence. Each choice weighs heavy on your soul. Look around you. Your sins stand before you, a testament of your failure. Frantic whispers rippled through the gathering. What does he mean? What sins? Anxious murmurs danced like leaves in the wind. Panic twisted in their bellies as they remembered their own failings, the lies, the betrayals, the unresolved feuds. It was as if the night was calling for confessions, wringing them dry of every hidden truth, every gnawing regret. That I and Canaan, the warriors couldn't shake off the prophecy hanging above them. Shadows loomed large, blending seamlessly with the swirling storm. The youngest soldier, still trembling, stumbled back from the line, his eyes darting towards his comrades. "We have to do something. We can't just stand here." But a heavy silence fell as his fellow fighters felt the weight of judgment settle on their shoulders. Who were they, after all, to stand in the path of the truth calling them forth? And then he spoke again, the cloaked figure cutting a menacing sight soaked in rain. "You are the architects of your own demise. The gods of war have grown weary of your bloodshed." His voice danced within thunderclaps, a harrowing mantra pounding against each of their hearts. With every utterance, the air thickened, tugging at their survival instincts. The heaviness pressed down, a miasma of dread, as if the universe was about to lay it all bare. Suddenly, a gasp echoed through the villagers. A child, no older than 8, stepped forward from the cluster of adults, her face smeared with dirt and tears. Hearts clenched as they realized the innocence of her presence. "Stop!" she shouted, voice cracking yet resolute. "You're saying terrible things. What can we even do?" The prophetess expression softened, revealing a crack in the storm. "Ah, sweet child, it's not about what you can do, but what you must reckon with." He paused, slowly scanning the smattering of fearful faces. "Courage does not lie in fighting, but in facing the ghosts of your past. Only then can you hope to find redemption." But just as hope flickered in the eyes of the villagers, a low rumble emanated from beneath their feet, a primal growl in the midst of the weighty silence. Fear twisted tight in their throats, the ground once again began to tremble. The fissures birthed a great howling wind, hungry and raw, threatening to tear them apart. "Run!" someone cried, but it felt too late. The earth began to split open wider, a maw of darkness yawning beneath them. As desperation clawed at their hearts, they realized that greater horrors awaited them below. they could not escape in whirlwind chaos. As the depths of the abyss gaped before them, a final question loomed high in the air: what lies buried in the darkness? The path ahead twisted, a fusion of fear and potential as the villagers stared into the unknown, knowing their reckoning would determine their fate. What would they find beneath the surface? What memories and secrets lay in the waiting shadows? The darkness yawned wider, an unrelenting void that seemed to breathe in sync with their pounding hearts. Fear pounded in the villagers' chests, thrumming like a war drum as droplets of rain lashed against their faces. The child stood frozen, her small stature dwarfed by the chaos erupting around her. The echoes of her question still rang in the air, punctuated by the booming thunder above. "Do not be afraid," the prophet intoned, as if sensing their paralyzing terror. Yet how could they not feel dread? The air buzzed with impending doom. Each tremor of the earth whispered tales of unforgiving despair, of buried sins snug within the very bones of their homeland. "Can't you see?" a woman cried out, her voice breaking through the clutches of panic. "He speaks of our sins. We've done wrong." She clutched her chest, her heart racing, memories flooding back, those moments of malice, envy, and betrayal swirling like a tempest in her mind. "Shoo!" urged an old man beside her. His face was lined with the sadness of the years, worn from regret. "This isn't just about us. This is the reckoning we all feared. Perhaps we must face what we buried long ago." As lightning danced across the night sky, the villagers felt their collective fear churn with their buried grievances. The darkness beneath them buzzed with undiscovered stories, secrets lurking in the shadows, waiting to rise. Who among them had the courage to confront these specters of the past? "Look!" shouted another villager, pointing towards the darkness. A shadowy form began to emerge from the chasm, twisting and writhing. It seemed to be shaped by the guilt and anguish of the very souls watching in horror. "Can you see it?" the child asked, eyes wide, transfixed. It's alive." Yet not a single villager moved. They stood, connected in fear, as the figure grew more defined, its grotesque shape reverberating, almost pulsating with the raw energy of unspoken truths. It was as if the ground unveiled witnesses of their actions, depictions of their failures, their fears made flesh. Suddenly, the night air crackled, and the figure surged upward, revealing the faces of those they wronged. Mentions of forgotten names bursting into the open like ancient phantoms. The villagers gasped, recognition dawning on their features, a jarring mix of horror and dread. Their pasts weren't just echoes in their minds, they were manifesting before them. "No, no!" cried the woman who had spoken earlier, tears streaming down her cheeks as she covered her face in shame. "From the darkness, we are summoned," the prophet's voice boomed again, cutting through the tumult. "You cannot escape what you have sown. Every lie, every unkind thought, a garden of regret lies waiting to be harvested." With a sudden rush, the chasm began to breathe heavily, drawing faster, heavier, as if it sought to consume them whole. The shadows twisted, clawing outward, desperate for light, for acknowledgement. Each villager felt it, that undeniable weight of their past crashing down upon them. Together, the child whispered fiercely, her voice small yet full of conviction. "We have to face it together." Just as hope flickered once more, the ground split wider, the shadows twined around them like ghosts of their collective guilt, threatening to swallow them entirely. Dread painted the faces of many, uncertainty gnawed at their hearts. What would happen if they stared into the depths of their own darkness? For in that heartbeat of suspended time, a chilling realization struck true: the secrets they had buried were no longer theirs to hide. Would they confront their broken past? Or would they allow it to consume them, vanish into the void, never to emerge again? As the storm raged on, a final question lingered in the air, heavy as the rain: could redemption truly lie in facing their own shadows? The ground trembled beneath the villagers' feet, the darkness pulsating like a heartbeat, an ominous reminder of the weight they all bore. The shadows coiled around them, whispering secrets from the depths, murmurs of betrayal and sorrow that had woven through their lives like an invisible thread. "Can they come for us?" a young man gasped, his fear spilling into the night. He stepped back instinctively, feet slipping in the mud, breath shallow. The weight of his sins pressed heavily on his heart, a mixture of dread and guilt spiraling in his chest. Each villager felt the pull of memories, hastily buried but relentless in their return. Yes. The prophet bellowed over the cacophony of thunder. These are not mere shadows. They are the cries of those you abandoned, the spirits of your past, full of pain and longing. His eyes were fierce and penetrative, locking onto each villager's gaze. To escape them, you must face your truth. A chilling wind howled, sweeping through the group, carrying with it echoes of their transgressions. There was a collective gasp. The child clutched her doll tightly, the simplistic image of innocence in contrast to the darkness threatening to engulf them. "We can't," she whispered, trembling, but the old man, his voice trembling yet resolute, replied, "We must. What choice do we have?" The faces rising from the chasm grew clearer, each one bearing the pain of memories buried deep. A child who was shunned for a minor transgression. An elder blamed for the village's misfortunes. The stage was set, the time for reckoning nigh. With a cry, the woman who had wept earlier stepped forward. "I will speak. I will face them." Her voice echoed, strong yet quivering. "Each of you must step into the light of your own darkness." The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if struck by an unseen force. As the villagers hesitated, she took another step. "I can't hide any more. I hurt you." One by one, the villagers followed her lead, their voices rising, weaving together a tapestry of confessions. Whispers morphed into shouts, fear into courage. "I was unfaithful," cried a man. "I turned away," shouted another. "Power of truth is within," the prophet declared, and for the first time the shadows hesitated, as if the anger within could be muted by the raw honesty of their words. The tempest swirled above, echoing with the tempest in their hearts, yet as they spoke aloud their regrets, cracks of light sliced through the stifling darkness. The ground, trembling and alive with energy, seemed to absorb their confessions, roots spreading deeper into the earth, seeking out the darkness within itself. "I see you," the child shouted, the innocence of her faith shining through the chaos. "I see you all." There was a sudden swelling of energy, the specters responding to her light like moths to a flame. "Come forth," someone cried, spurred on by her courage. The shadows shifted, slowly revealing the faces of those they'd wronged, but now they bore expressions of understanding and grief rather than anger. The villagers held their breath, caught in this powerful moment. Redemption felt almost tangible, an electric charge in the air. Just as hope began to blossom, one figure stepped from the shadows, its face obscured, but the aura was filled with darkness and despair. "Who are you?" the woman breathed, a new fear manifesting in her voice. The figure loomed larger, the shadows stretching longer, blocking out the flickering light around them. "I am the price of your silence," it intoned, voice heavy like a weight upon the soul. The villagers flinched, realizing this manifestation was no ordinary spirit but a keeper of their darkest secrets, a harbinger of reckoning. As the storm winds howled louder, a question brewed in the air, a quest for understanding entangled with fear and hope. Could facing this darkness finally unleash their redemption, or was it simply another step into an abyss from which they couldn't return? The figure loomed closer, shadows dancing wildly around it as if trying to escape its grasp. The villagers could feel its presence, a mix of dread and inevitability pressing in from all sides. Heartbeats quickened, breath quickened. It was nearly tangible, they could feel it crawling across their skin. "I am the keeper of your silence," it repeated, voice deep and thunderous. "Each of you knows me well. I am the price you paid for denial and the pain you've woven into the fabric of this village." Whispers filled the air, voices trembling with fear. "What do you mean?" asked an old woman, her eyes wide with confusion. She seemed not to recognize the figure, yet its words cut deeper than any blade, slicing through layers of defense they had built over the years. The figure lifted an arm, and shadows followed, coiling into a grotesque representation of their worst decisions. "You watched as lives shattered. You turned your eyes when help was needed. Each soul cries for justice, but your silence has buried them deeper into despair. Gasps erupted around the crowd, their shared secrets spilling into the stormy air. The child cast out for mischief, the woman who turned her back when a friend fell ill, the man who sought wealth at the cost of community. Each confession hung thick like fog, heavy with remorse. Suddenly, the old man shouted, pulling himself, struggling to stand tall. We have come here tonight to confront our sins. We've held our tongues, but no more. He stepped forward, eyes fierce and blazing. Let us face our past. Let us speak our truths. If we must face consequences, I won't do it alone. The figure hesitated, flickering like a candle in the wind, but then it solidified again, a shadowy abyss. Very well. Speak your truths, let them echo through the alleys of despair. Will you unravel your silence? The villagers started to share their tales, one after another, the urgency thick in their voices, but something deep within the heart of the shadows stirred. With every confession, the figure's form began to shift, becoming less defined, less menacing. Instead, it started to mirror the faces of those they mourned, lost children, weary elders. The collective gasping morphed into desperate echoes. I stole, shouted a young woman. And I lied, moaned a father. With every confession, sparks crackled around them, and the air turned electric. Release us. A voice cried out among the shadows, a child's lament, reminding them of what they had lost. You abandoned us. The crowd froze, the haunting realization sinking in. They had buried their wrongdoings but also buried the spirits of those who deserved truth. Their guilt morphed into an anchor, pulling them down into murky depths. But I loved you. The woman from earlier shouted, eyes glistening with tears. Forgive me. The shadows rippled, and the air grew heavy with tension. Some villagers were faltering, doubt creeping in, yet others took a stand. They were at the precipice of a moment that demanded courage, teetering on the brink of clarity or chaos. As they continued to engage with the presence, the winds howled louder, threatening to rip apart the fragile connections they were forming. The figure surged forward, embodying terror, but the humans held fast, refusing to flinch. And then silence fell as the figure loomed once more, its voice a hushed whisper. Who are you willing to sacrifice for your truth? A deathly calm enveloped them as the realization settled in. Was it just emotional wounds they needed to face, or was darkness lurking below something far more sinister? In the ensuing quiet, a faint sound emerged, a crack like glass shattering, echoing through the once still air, leaving them with a singular, chilling question: what if their darkest truths were just the beginning? As they stood there, the crack resonated through them, reverberating like an ominous drumbeat. An unseen force stirred the shadows, swirling them into shapes both grotesque and familiar. The air thickened, and the villagers began to feel a weight pressing down upon them. The figure hadn't vanished, no, it was waiting, poised to strike at their deepest fears. What, stammered the old woman who had asked the figure a question earlier, her voice trembling. What are we to do? Her frail body shook as if the wind threatened to carry her away. The figure's laughter thundered across the clearing, cruel and mocking. Face the truth you have ignored. Let it haunt you until you relent. It leaned in, the flickering shadows morphing into the anguished faces of those long gone. A lost father, a betrayed friend. Figures who had once been alive, now demanding acknowledgement. Enough! Shouted the young woman from earlier, her defiance igniting a spark of hope in the eyes of others. We will not be the sacrifices you demand. Our truths belong to us, not to fear. But as her words echoed, something twisted within the crowd. Each villager felt the pulsating sensation of guilt and shame washing over them, gnawing on their resolve. They stuttered, looking from one person to another, almost seeking permission to withdraw or to confess more. A man in the back crushed his fists together, as if ready to lash out. What if we can't face it? His voice was thick, layered with anxiety. What if the truths are too much? The crowd murmured, fears bubbling to the surface, like a cauldron slowly boiling over. Then you shall be swallowed by them, the figure whispered, its face shifting to reveal a visage that was both familiar and frightening, an amalgamation of all their worst fears. You carry the weight of every lie, every secret, every dismissal. I will not let you forget. Suddenly, the wind howled louder, and the shadows reached out like clawed hands, clawing at their feet. The elders stumbled backward, and the children screamed, grabbing onto their parents. Pain radiated through the gathered mass as they realized they could no longer separate themselves from their past. A child's soft voice cut through the chaos, "Mommy. Help us." Her innocence sparked a reaction. The villagers began to shake, refusing to be dehumanized any longer. One by one, they stepped forward. "I am ready," the old man from before declared, his voice steadying. "Let my soul come to bear witness." His words ignited hope. The villagers began to find their own voices amidst the fear. "Me too," chimed a young couple, hands clasped tight. "We've known pain, and we know love. We will share our truths." As they spoke, the air crackled with energy. With each truth proclaimed, a thin beam of light broke through the oppressive darkness. Each confession forced the shadows to recoil, creating pockets of raw emotion, anguish, regret, but also blossoming relief. Yet, amidst this flicker of hope, the figure shifted and grew darker, its enraged howls slicing through the air. "You think you will escape me? Your truths spill like blood on this land. Speak if you dare. It will change nothing." The villagers locked eyes, courage igniting within them, but fear still lingered like a whisper, "What if it does?" They knew the battle was on a finer edge. Betrayal lurked in their silence as they looked within, a reflection of their true selves forced to confront the dangers of honesty. A voice rang out, fierce and piercing, "Then we fight together." But could they truly bear the weight of their collective truths? As the shadows swirled like a storm ready to unleash its fury, they realized this was only the beginning. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: in facing their truths, could they reshape their destiny, or would they summon a darkness far greater than they ever anticipated? The shadows twisted violently, a churning tempest fueled by the energy of confused souls. The figure before them seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shifting its form in a grotesque dance of betrayal and shame. Its laughter wove into the howling wind, shredding the courage that had just begun to blossom. "Do you think your united voices can drown out the echo of your sins?" It sneered, its voice dripping with malice. "Face it. You are nothing more than your secrets." The villagers felt the darkness close in, thick as fog, wrapping around their throats, choking their resolve. Anguish surged in their hearts like tidal waves crashing against a rocky shore. They turned to the old man. His declaration had lit a fire in them, but now it flickered, wavering like a candle in a storm. "Speak. Speak your truth," the young woman urged, her voice rising above the cacophony. "We must not cower." Adrenaline coursed through the crowd. A young man stepped forward, trembling but resolute. I lied to my family about where I was that night. I let them believe I was safe while I wasted away." He squeezed his eyes shut, tears spilling over. "I put my anger above their love." The air shifted, and a crack of light shot through the dark, illuminating his figure. The shadows shrieked, retreating momentarily, as if repelled by the confession. The trembling villagers exchanged tentative glances, sensing the power of vulnerability in a world where lies clung like smog. "Then I'm next," shouted a middle-aged woman. "I abandoned my sister when she needed me most. I ignored her cries." Her voice cracked, but it was filled with courage. As the darkness writhed, her words rang true, cutting deeper than any blade. With each confession, the crowd unraveled the knot of their fears, their voices rising together like a chorus. "I've been a coward," a man bellowed. "I hid behind my wealth, letting my children think I loved them with gifts instead of time." The figure roared in outrage, its form distorting violently, but the villagers pressed on. "I've cheated my customers. I've blamed others. I've done nothing to save my town. Each truth was a dagger lodged into the creature's heart, causing it to buck and writhe in pain. Dark tendrils recoiled, shrieking in agony. Light fought against the encroaching shadows, creating small pockets of luminescence within the darkened clearing, yet, haunting echoes persisted. You are flawed. The figure screeched, its voice rising to a fever pitch. You think your confessions cleanse you? They make you weaker. I will consume you. But their fear began to morph into a strange sense of empowerment. As they shouted their admissions, burdens lightened. A palpable energy surged in the air, connecting them like an electric current. The painful weight of their pasts transformed into an undeniable resolve. Together. Someone called, and the words ignited a fire in the hearts of the villagers. They clung to one another as shadows swirled around them like a cyclone. With each additional confession, they formed a unified barrier of light, bravely standing against what had once seemed insurmountable. Then the figure hesitated, the chaos momentarily stilled. Doubt flickered across its grotesque features. It seemed to sense that this bond was growing stronger, a shield of truth against its wicked design, but then, a deep rumble broke through the clearing. The ground shook beneath them, splitting open with a fiery glow. Dark roots of fear snagged at their feet, pulling them down. Are you ready to face a truth worse than your own? The creature hissed, its malevolent grin unnerving. What if I told you that even your deepest scars hide a truth far more terrible? As the ground writhed, the villagers felt their hearts pound, unsure of what lay beneath them. Would this final truth reveal salvation or hold a horror they feared to uncover? A crack of thunder echoed in the distance, amplifying their dread as they braced themselves for the terrible truth yet to come. In the deafening silence that followed, the villagers braced themselves, hearts racing in unison. The shadows writhed, and the figure loomed larger, its voice crashing like waves against the rocky shore of their souls. Face what churns below. Feel the truth that has bound you for far too long. A palpable fear hung thick in the air. Faces pale and eyes wide, they exchanged knowing glances, an electric tension humming through their community. Each had siblings, parents, children that had been lost to their sins. Now, staring down the abyss of their hidden guilt, they felt the weight of responsibility, a responsibility they could no longer ignore. The eyes of the little girl glimmered with an unyielding hope, shining light upon the dark path they tread. We can do this. We have to. She affirmed, her petite figure standing defiantly against the encroaching shadows. With a deep breath, the old man stepped forward, shaking but resolute. No more hiding. Let it come forth. We're ready to confront our darkest truths, whatever they may be. His voice, though trembling, was a rallying cry that echoed through the hearts of the villagers, and with that, a whirlwind of confessions erupted like an uncontainable flood. I betrayed my friend. One man cried out, trembling with the weight of his revelation. I allowed greed to steal my compassion. Shouted another, regret flooding his voice. The others soon joined in, confessing pain and loss alike, the truthful strands of their lives weaving together a tapestry of hope. Together. We are stronger. The young soldier from Canaan declared, stepping toward the depths of the fissure. The shadows fought against them, hissing and swirling like a tempest, but the villagers pressed on, fueled by each other's courage. The darkness recoiled with every confession, inching back as brilliant flashes of light punctured through the tempest, illuminating the path ahead. Families held each other close, gathering strength amid shaking hands and tear-drenched cheeks. The air crackled with the power of their collective honesty. Reluctantly, the figure began to shriek, You think you can face me? You are but shadows of your own despair. Its wretched form flickered, less tangible now, as if their confessions were shattering its power. Not so. The child shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. We are more than our mistakes. We are laughter, love, and all the joy we've forgotten. For a brief moment, the air stilled, the shadows halted their twisting dance. A calmness washed over them. The prophet appeared, rising from the depths of the tumult, his dark cloak billowing around him. This is your chance. To claim your past and step into the light, he declared, a haunting glimmer in his sharp eyes. Redemption lies in embracing the truth. With renewed vigor, the villagers shouted, "We accept our pasts. We embrace our pain." They turned back toward the chasm, voices harmonizing into a resolute chorus, a melody of acceptance and courage. The shadows recoiled further, shrieking in protest, and a roar of triumphant energy surged through the villagers, binding them like roots intertwining deep within the earth, nourishing their resolve. The figure writhed in anger, thrashing amid the light radiating from their collective strength. "You cannot escape me. I am the keeper of your darkest secrets. Then let us face you together. Your power cannot hold us captive any longer." A woman's voice cried from amongst the gathered, fierce and resolute, and with that declaration, the very ground trembled one last time, and the darkness tilted. Confessions flooded forth, a tide too strong to contain, washing over the shadows that had haunted them, illuminating long-buried secrets with shimmering clarity, neutralizing their grasp. Suddenly, the figure emitted one final shriek, contorting and twisting. "No. This cannot be. You do not understand the truth of your own darkness." But the villagers stood firm now, standing shoulder to shoulder against the encroaching abyss. They felt the depths of their shadows mingling with the brightest parts of their truths. Painting a new canvas filled with hope. As dawn began to break, the shadows flickered and faded, sucked back into the widening chasm from which they had emerged. The villagers gasped as sunlit warmth enveloped them. Miraculously, they had reclaimed their souls, transformed through the very horror that had threatened to devour them. Freedom radiated from their hearts, igniting the air with exuberance and relief. Tears streamed down their faces, not of anguish, but of rejuvenation. They had wrestled their truths from the darkest corners of their existence, mingling pain with forgiveness, each face glowing brighter. As the first rays of sunlight poured upon the land, illuminating their surroundings, they realized they had been given a new beginning, a collective rebirth. They had faced what lay below, and in doing so, they emerged transformed, ready to rebuild their shattered lives. As they gathered together, hearts lighter than air, they turned to one another with renewed purpose, ready to support one another through healing. "Together," whispered the child, her eyes sparkling with innocence and hope, "we can rise anew." And with that single statement, a chorus of agreement filled the air as the villagers solidified their vow. As the sunlight broke free, they opened their arms, welcoming the dawn, a promise of a brighter future, blooming through the ashes of their past. In that moment, they understood, true redemption comes not from running away from one's truth but facing it head-on. They had passed judgment on their pasts and emerged stronger, unified, and full of light. So here ends the tale of darkness, shadows, and terrifying truths. But remember, every ending bleeds into a new beginning. And, dear viewers, this brings us to a critical moment. If you love this powerful conclusion, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that light up your world. Smash that like button now to show your support and feed the algorithm, bringing even more heartfelt tales to life. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how these brave souls faced their truths and emerged victorious. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration and hope in their lives. Let's build this community together.